Talk about, if you would, your point. I'm sure you've had doubts along your journey for 19 years. Did you have was there one point where sort of your emotional low point where you thought maybe this is not going to work out?
I mean, it was 2008, and it wasn't necessarily what was going on in the economy, but it was just what was going on in my personal economy. And I had just had a bad relationship with money. And it really didn't matter how much I made. You've seen this for decades.
Sure.
And just, you know, Marlo and I were in a lot of stress. We're in a lot of debt. You know, my kids were on the other side of the country, and we're entering the Great Recession. And that was a real low point. But, you know, I could have folded my cards, but in hindsight, it was one of the greatest gifts that ever happened to me, because it caused me to have to really change, to grow, to look at my beliefs, upgrade those beliefs, and really get better. So I wouldn't be here right now if it wasn't for what happened in that hardship in 08, for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, a lot of times the adversities make you stronger, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
If you had to start the business over from scratch, it's 1999, you're just getting started up, and now you know what you know now.
Yeah.
What would you do differently?
I would have enjoyed the process more earlier on, in hindsight.
And what does that look like?
Well, trusting that it was going to work a little bit versus having that kind of that. I mean, you're an entrepreneur. You have that knot in your gut, and you're stressed out. You're
free in the morning.
Out. Yeah. And you know, and I had this really bad habit of going, well, one day I'm going to be happy, and that one day was always one day away. And so I would have just enjoyed it a little bit more earlier on. And I would have dove in if somebody would have told me to look at my money beliefs. I mean, that literally was the thing that, I mean, it took me 9 years after the fact to really understand that, man, dude, you have a jacked up relationship with money.
Most of us do, right?
You have negative thoughts, and so, I wish I would have done that work earlier on. And if I had to, I know a lot of people are going to be watching this, but that's something that I teach profusely. And until your situation and your stories and your beliefs around money change, it really doesn't matter how much money you make here, because you're not going to keep it. And that was my experience. So once I transformed that, then my life really changed.
Could you have gone faster? If you had to do it over again, would you have gone faster, you think?
I mean, I think I was going pretty fast, but having those negative beliefs, it's kind of like, training for a marathon, and then, you have the right shoes on, and you're hydrated, and you ate all the food, and you're in great shape, and you go to the start line, and somebody comes and attaches a 30-pound bowling ball to your ankle.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's kind of, I would have gone faster on shifting all limiting beliefs, approval addiction. I would have dove in there a lot more, versus my answer from Anderson was always like, work harder. Work harder.
Right.
And that's not always the answer.
Right.
And once you start freeing up those beliefs and freeing up how you see yourself, it gets a lot easier and a lot better. So that's where I would have spent time working.
Okay. Just a couple more questions, Chris, because I know you have to go.
Yeah.
What's giving you the greatest joy in World Financial Group?
Well, I think it was coming out of my lowest point where, as you know, in life, there's a pretty side and an ugly side. And guess what? No different with WFG. There's a pretty side and there's an ugly side. So you got to make sure you're looking at the right side. And I was spending time looking at the ugly side. And I was like, my guys weren't winning as much, and I really defined success in a very narrow view. Like, if you didn't have this color ring, or if you weren't going on these trips, you weren't successful. Well, there's a lot of my guys that didn't. And so almost as a last-ditch effort, just to save my sanity, I sat down with 20 of my most successful guys, and I just said, regardless of how much money you've made or how successful you think you are or not, how's this business change your life? And I interviewed them. Holy crap, man. It was humbling. Just like, hey, this business saved my marriage. How? Well, I learned this. God, my kids, what I'm teaching my kids is amazing. My health's better. I actually had two people say, this business saved my life. And they went into pretty gory details about what they were thinking about doing.
Wow.
And I said, come to a meeting? Right?
Right, sure.
And I'm like, holy cow, this business, you're the first person that's ever believed in me. And I mean, so just stuff like that.
Right, you wouldn't expect.
No, and I was just like, oh my God, man.
It's more than the money.
Yeah, it's more than the money, and that's when, and I've talked a lot about it across the company, is I quit recruiting to business and I started recruiting to the purpose of helping people have a better life, and my business went through the roof. And so my greatest joy is that.
I'll bet.
And that legacy, you know, and that's the power too, also for the person that's just kind of like, should I or shouldn't I? And like, no, I mean, you really have the opportunity to transform a life like no other business model on the planet. I couldn't have done that at Anderson.
Right.
And my buddies that are Anderson guys are ex-alums, and I mean, they're successful, and I'm not judging them, but, you know, they've impacted a few people.
Right.
We've impacted just my group, and there's bigger teams than mine, right? We've impacted thousands and thousands and thousands, and the ripple effect is phenomenal.
Well, you have an amazing team. I will say as an outsider, I've spoken to your team lots of times. You have an amazing team.
Yeah, so that's where
it really is.
You know, so my buddies that are retiring to the golf course, and they're like, what are you doing? I'm like, man, I just want to go, you know, transform people's lives and help them have a better life. And once again, that's why when people leave, I don't get all Twitter-pated about it or caught up in that. It's just like, no, I know your life improved. Even if you're here for a week or you're here for 19 years. And I'll tell you one thing. Anyone that's trying to figure it out, I guarantee this. You plug in, your life will get better.
Makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
What's your favorite client story?
Oh, there's a lot of them. I call them extreme. You like extreme makeovers, right?
Sure.
I call them extreme financial makeovers.
Okay.
So, right, we all love the before and afters. But my favorite client story was actually I was referred to this lady, and she's a CPA. She's a certified management accountant, and she got referred to me. And she was a corporate auditor. I'm still kind of scared of her today a little bit, right? And we sat down, and she said, "Hey, in March of 2012, I'm retiring. You're my guy." And I was like, okay. I was like, you're pretty smart. Why don't you do it on your own?
I remember reading about this, and this was in 2003 this happened, right? I remember reading something somewhere about this,
Yeah, and I was just like, well, why don't you just do it on your own, right? Susie Orman says you can do it on your own, and Kramer says you can do it on your own, and she taught me a lesson that really changed my career. She said, Chris, when your emotion goes up, your intelligence goes down. And that's the way I am about my money. And so we just started working with her. And not only did we work on the product stuff, but we worked on her mentality, right? Her why she spent, all that, and we got clear, and we just hand in hand. And guess what? March of 2012 happened. She had a retirement party at her work, and then she had cocktail hour with me, and
this is the one that goes on the cruises, the cruise lady.
Yeah, she goes on
the cruises. I remember reading about this.
Yeah, she goes on cruises. Yeah, and she emails me
3 cruises a year, or something like that.
She emails me, and I met with her just about a month ago, and I'm like, Tanya, after you've taken all this money out, you retired in 2012, and you have more today than when you retired. It's unbelievable. And I'm like, and you will never, ever run out of money.
That's
You'll never, ever run out of money.
Must feel good to
No, it's just phenomenal. And the peace of mind that, you know, and she always asks me, she's like, do you know what it feels like not to have to worry about money? I'm like, well, fortunately, I've created a business here that affords me that. But yeah, I get it. And so, you know, but for the one of those that we find, there's the millions that we don't.
Sure.
And so if people are like, well, why do you guys recruit? And why do you MLM? And all, I'm like, dude, we need more people to find the Tanyas of the world.
Right.
And that's it. It's, you know, that's the mission. So
it's a great story. Yeah. I remember reading about that somewhere now that once you said it. Yeah. How would you describe WFG's unique culture? Because you guys do. I've never seen a culture, and I've worked, as you know, with the biggest companies in the world for many years. I've never seen a culture like WFG. How would you describe it? Because people ask me all the time, how would you describe it?
It's sort of indescribable, right? And once again, I mean, you know, if you're coming from a dull corporate, you know, grind, and I call it kind of emotionally stuck, and you step into this, like, I mean, it's a jolt to the system, is it not?
Sure,
right?
It is a jolt. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean,
a good jolt. Though.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, it's high energy. It's energetic. It's dynamic. I mean, I think one of the things that I love about it is it's impossible to outgrow the leadership of the company. I mean, everyone's just always getting better. My brother, he's a pharmaceutical sales guy, And he just got back from some big conference, and I don't know, some guy spoke, and he's like sending me slides of like what this guy's training on. He's like, man, this is unbelievable and all that. And I'm looking at the slides going, yeah, we had like a senior associate training on this stuff last week, right?
Yeah.
Like,
you guys are way ahead.
Like, I'm like, dude, this is like elementary stuff, man.
Oh, yeah.
And so, no, I mean, it's unbelievable, and it fuels you and feeds you. I mean, you know what it's like to come out of that, so.
Okay. Yeah, I like to get around it as an outsider just to feel the energy. Is amazing. Yeah. What do you think is the most misunderstood aspect of the WFG opportunity?
I think, you come in here and we start talking about, dreaming and having dreams. And for me, the dream machine was dead, right? And I think the most misunderstood thing is you start thinking about having a big life. You start thinking about having a great life. You start thinking about financial freedom and money. And I think the biggest mistake people make is the person that sits in that chair is not the person that's going to get that for them. They have to grow into that, and they have to develop into that. And so, that's, and once again, suffering's optional as you do that.
Yeah.
But you need to grow, you need to develop, you need to develop, some realistic time horizons of what this thing's going to look like, and you need to plug in, and you need to be committed and not interested. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people that come in and they're like, I'm interested in that.
So it's misunderstood in terms of that the person they are right now is going to be the person that builds it. Is that what you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, even the vision that Marlo and I, what we have as a couple. I mean, it's a big vision. I mean, we're thinking big, but I know that I have to grow into that. And I have to get better.
Great thing, though. What a beautiful thing. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's unbelievable. And once again, and I'm going to enjoy that process of getting better versus struggling.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. You can enjoy it or you can suffer. It's the same process.
Yeah,
absolutely. No, that's great stuff. Any additional thoughts that you have, Chris, for people on the fence? And you kind of addressed this a little bit, but anything else that you would... That person, this is a life-changing decision for people, as you know. Yeah. Even if they don't know it watching this, we both know people change. Their whole lives change. Yeah. Anything that you can
I mean, it's a life-changing decision, but in my opinion, it's only going to be a better life-changing decision, right? And I would kind of take the heaviness off of it a little bit and give it a shot. And get in, and I think a lot of people spend too much time, and then they complain on the internet, right? Where, once again, they're interested in financial independence, but they're not really committed to it. They're interested in getting better, but they're not really committed to it. And they also spend a lot of time vacillating between, is this going to work? Is it not going to work? Is it going to work? Is it not going to work? And it's tough to do. And, being a fully recovered CPA. It's a 12-step process. First step's denial. Anyway, but being a fully recovered CPA, I know what it's like that you have to grow and you have to develop. And I've talked more people out of doing business with me than I ever care, right? I wasn't good at this business. But one thing I had in my mind, not that I didn't have doubts, but I was like, you know what? The phrase is until. I'm going to stick with this thing until it works. And I was driving up here with my kids, and I was thinking about how I got recruited, and the internet wasn't really a thing in 1999. So I got this big box dropped on my front porch of stuff, and it was a VHS tape.
Oh yeah,
from our former founder, and I put it in, and this was the moment for me. And he said the problem with dreams is if you don't do something about it, how sad that would be. And that totally hooked me. And he said, for the right person, this is the greatest business opportunity on the planet. And those were two things. Man, the problem with dreams is if you don't do something about it, how sad that'll be. And then for the right person, this is the greatest business opportunity on the planet. And I think that stuff hasn't changed in 19 years. So if you have a dream, man, I haven't found a better vehicle. Or I would be doing it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so last question is there anything I didn't ask you that you wanted me to ask you, or that I should have asked you that would help a person make a decision? Anything?
No, I mean, do your work and make a decision. And if you need help with that decision, sometimes people go make a decision in a vacuum, and they ask their broke friends if it's a good idea, right? And what are they going to say, right?
Sure.
And so make sure you're talking to the right people who are successful and have your best interests at heart, and ask them of their opinion. But make a decision. If it's just a pro and con statement. Unfortunately, they don't teach decision making in school.
That's right. Yeah, they should.
Unfortunately, people don't know how to make decisions. And so left to their own devices, they often do nothing, or they make the wrong decision.
Right.
And so trust the person that's excited about the opportunity. Sit down with them, because sometimes people go away and they look at the internet and they do all this stuff and they get their other struggling broke friends around for a caucus. And for me, it was always about, if the person wasn't ultimately where I wanted to be, I was not going to take advice from them. So get your butt back in the office, sit down with the senior marketing director, sit down with the person that invited you, and just go, plus, minus. I mean, seriously, just get it out on a piece of paper. I mean, what's the minus? I don't know what the minus is.
Right.
I'm sure people can come up with it, but if you do it that way, it's not going to be hard to make a decision.
Not a lot of downside.
There's not a lot of downside. But if you sit down, you take the motion out of it, and you just write it down, pros and cons, the pros are going to outweigh the cons, and your life's going to get better.
Chris, I really appreciate you taking time. Thanks for doing it.
Yeah.
And thank you guys for watching.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thanks.